For a long time, I have had a fascination with the idea of horror games, but I never had the courage to actually play through one by myself. Because with, say, horror movies, while they can still be frightening, you can always comfort yourself with the fact that you are a bystander, whereas with horror games, you are an active participant. You are the one in the driver's seat, and the story cannot move forward without you. And it's this idea that you are a part of it and is forced to experience the horror yourself that I found so interesting, but at the same time off-putting at a younger age. But now a bit bigger and hairier, I decided to slowly enter this strange new territory of games. And I decided to specifically focus on indie horror titles, many of which I ended up liking, but I could never seem to stop hearing about the two specific horror franchises that seem to have inspired them all. Those being Resident Evil and Silent Hill, both of which I already had some vague knowledge about before, but have never experienced myself. I found Silent Hill to be the most interesting to start with, despite Resident Evil coming first, and its success apparently being the main reason as to why Silent Hill was even created in the first place. I have always preferred more atmospheric and subdued horror, which seemed to be what Silent Hill was going for. And despite Silent Hill 2 being the most infamous and beloved installment in the franchise, I decided to go back to the very beginning to see the foundation upon which this beloved franchise was born. And what I found will shock you. In Silent Hill 1, you play as Harry Mason, who following the death of his wife, decided to travel to the titular resort town of Silent Hill, together with his daughter, Cheryl. But on the way there, he crashes the car to avoid hitting a strange woman in the road. Waking up some time later, only to discover that Cheryl is gone. Our mission from here on is quite straightforward, to find what happened to Cheryl, but of course, the journey there is much more complicated, as throughout the game we also slowly begin to uncover the town's dark history and a twisted reality that if left unchecked could destroy the world as we know it. While the game's initial hook is quite effective, the story doesn't fully kick in until the later half of the game, so until then you are more or less left picking up cryptic clues to try and figure out what is going on. But even when things are starting to unravel, and you finally are starting to understand what is going on, it still lacks any dramatic tension. You are not really given a valid reason to actually care about the different characters you meet along the way. The only one I felt some vague sense of attachment to was Harry himself. Not because he's a well-written character, on the contrary, but I adore how ridiculously oblivious he is to everything around him.
What is this?
I do enjoy the cutscenes in this quite a lot, thanks in most part to the voice acting.
Hold it!
No one seems to know how to react in any given circumstance, and Harry's voice actor especially sounds like he's just reading the script.
Yeah.
The game's writing is certainly a mixed bag, but where I think Silent Hill truly shines is not through its story or characters, but through Silent Hill itself. It's not often that I become fully invested in the setting alone. The constant snowfall, the creeping fog, and the sheer emptiness of the place all combined create this foreboding atmosphere that to me was really impactful, and the fact that the game looks this way, mainly because of hardware limitations, really speaks for the fact that sometimes less is more. You can of course not talk about Silent Hill's atmosphere without talking about the absolutely terrifying music and sound design by Akira Yamaoka. The one thing that always kept me at the edge of my seat was not the fear of a jump scare or losing progress. It was always the moments where nothing was happening, but the music would make you feel like something was watching you from deep within the fog or on the other end of a dark hallway. The game creates suspense even when there is no reason for it. and it makes finding safe rooms all the more rewarding, giving you room to collect yourself before returning to the nightmare. I don't think it's a very controversial take to say that Silent Hill will be a very forgettable game, if not for the music. It's so integral to the atmosphere and tone that it's hard to imagine the game without it. That is not to say that Silent Hill is otherwise unenjoyable, but it can be equally frustrating, especially in terms of the game's combat, which is bordering on being unusable at times. The melee combat felt slow, and because of how restricted your movement is, it is almost impossible to clear a horde of enemies unscathed, and the auto-aim used for guns never seemed to aim at the right target. You could also say that I should just get good, which is fair enough, but despite being frustrating gameplay-wise, it does add a layer of suspense to the game because of it being so restricting. Another part of the game that I felt was a bit of a mixed bag are the puzzles. I'm not the biggest fan when puzzle solving boils down to finding a key to unlock a room with another key inside that you then need to unlock another room to progress. There are some puzzles that are a bit more complicated than that, which often ranges from being blindly obvious to straight up confusing, oftentimes because they make the puzzle seem more complicated than it actually is. But in the end, these issues did not have a big effect on my overall enjoyment of the game. It is, despite some outdated mechanics and lackluster writing, a very solid and effective horror game. I can't stress enough how much I love the music and atmosphere. It is some of the best I've experienced, ever. Also, on my first playthrough, I got the bad ending. I won't spoil it, but it is one of my favorite endings of all time. I did replay the game and got the good ending, but it just was not the same. Highly recommend the bad ending, even though I guess it's not the canon ending. Now, I will play Silent Hill 2 regardless, but it would be nice of you to hit the like button, maybe even subscribe if you haven't. With all of that said, welcome to the channel and have a good one.